Hello and welcome back to The Marketing Hustle. If it's your first time here, I'm your host, Lottie. And where have you been? We've been doing this for so long now. If you love hearing unfiltered stories from bold brands on how they do their marketing and how founders survive in their jobs, you're in the right place. Today, I chatted to Molly Johnson-Jones, who is founder of Flexa, where you can browse roles with work-life balance at companies who match your personal preferences and make a really informed decision about where you're going to apply for your next job. Molly is a total powerhouse who I've admired for a really long time. We talked about her definition of flexible work, which is work-life integration, why LinkedIn has totally changed her business with her 75,000 followers, and how she's come to see herself as a saleswoman, which is an identity she's felt quite uncomfortable with. I really hope you enjoy it as much as I did. This episode is brought to you by Be A Bear. Be A Bear specialise in growing audiences. They believe that the best way to build any business is with an engaged and excited audience. And over the past 6 years, they've worked on strategies to support local startups through to global super brands. This year, they've delivered projects for Molton Brown, Red Bull, MTV and Channel 5, to name a few, and they're currently working with a couple of brands from the Upworld community to help build their market awareness. Go and check them out. For now, back to the show. So we've been talking about LinkedIn and how you spend, in your words, way too much time thinking about it. Has LinkedIn changed your business?
Yes, 100%. I think what was most interesting is when we started Flexa, I had a story to tell. And we knew that that was going to be woven into our brand story. Yet another HR tech startup, more believable in some way. So I just started posting on LinkedIn. I'd never done it before. And when I started, I reckon I was getting about 20 likes. And most of them were because I was sending links to my friends and being like, can you like this page?
20 likes, all of whom I've asked for.
Yes, exactly. Maybe like 1 or 2 organic ones. And then suddenly it started to completely snowball. And I went from probably 1,000 followers to now about 75 in about under 3 years. Not really, really, really fast growth, but pretty steady and decent growth.
Pretty fast growth.
And it generates us an enormous number of leads, which is really, and I can directly attribute revenue to it.
And that's from links that's from links on your page, or that's from DMs? How does that come through?
So links in the content, like the comments of the content, where I'm trying to direct somebody to something. We then get their details and then that becomes a lead. Or probably the most effective one that we've refined over time is we combine the sort of brand awareness approach of my LinkedIn with outbound from me.
Handwritten by Molly.
Yes.
Late at night.
So outreach from me, edit that bit out. Outreach from me to them if they have engaged with my posts or commented, because I've been doing it for so long now that I have a very specific audience that reaches the right kind of buyers for our product, which has been a really interesting journey, because you also see some people go mega viral with a picture of a billboard and 20,000 likes, and you're like, God, that engagement's amazing, but also that's not going to get you anything. So I think there's always that trade-off of vanity metrics versus useful metrics.
Well, what you're trying to do with it.
Yeah.
Either you're building LinkedIn to build a personal brand for a particular goal. If you're building your personal brand to drive a business, then there's a very different kind of outcome.
Yeah.
What have you learned on the journey?
So much.
I mean, I know that's a huge question.
I think LinkedIn's changed an enormous amount. I know a lot of people that are very frustrated with it at the moment. So if I kind of ignore the last 4 months, because I'm still trying to unpick that, I think I've learned that the really boring one is that when everyone says consistency is key, it is. Like, you just have to post at least three times a week.
At least.
I did do the first 2 years just 3 times a week, and it did work, but at least 3 times a week. You have to pick a topic, and it can be broad, and you can talk about a couple of things within a broad topic, but you can't be posting about, I don't know, animal welfare one day and then the future of work another day. Like that, you're not going to build an engaged following. And then the third one is that LinkedIn is a platform you have to invest time in. There is so much weird nuance and restrictions and niche. I hate the word hacks, but almost hacks to understand like how to get the most out of it. And so it's not really as simple as just posting and leaving it. Like if you're going to bother spending all that time creating the content, you do then have to spend time afterwards making sure that it performs.
So what's your one insider hack?
The one thing that I would say is really crucial is in the kind of hour after you've posted, replying to the comments that you have gone. And that could be as simple as like an emoji like woo, or an actual engaged comment. And you want to stimulate discussion.
Yeah.
You want more than like one back and forth, basically. And that will make a massive difference to engagement.
How much help do you have doing it all?
None. I have somebody obviously editing videos, and that's it.
But you do all your LinkedIn engagement yourself?
Yeah, because I've tried to outsource it.
Yeah.
Within the team, never to an agency, and it's never worked.
Never worked tonally or
Tonally, people get very used to a certain tone, a certain way that someone posts, and unless somebody is able to ape that almost identically, it becomes very obvious. Like I've seen a lot of creators where you can tell that they've suddenly got someone else doing it.
Yes.
And it's really
give
obvious.
references of that.
Yeah.
I think I also know stories where I didn't know.
Yeah. And I'm sure there are
So
good agencies out there.
There are not necessarily agents, like agencies, virtual assistants, teams, like there are people doing it and it's working.
Yeah.
But yeah, I ask because it's like such a personal pain point at the moment.
Yeah.
Why my LinkedIn has fallen off a cliff. I just do not have the headspace.
It's really hard to
give it the
take up
love
headspace.
it deserves.
Yeah, it does take up headspace, and I've tried to limit it and be like, there's half an hour where I'll do a post, and then there's half an hour where I'm ad hoc checking while doing emails or whatever, and that's made it a bit better. And then I am just always online as well, so like in the evenings or in the mornings, like just checking it.
Is that are you just working really hard? Is that just a comment on your life at the moment?
I don't think I'm not always working. I'm very much a fan of like work-life integration, of being like I'm on from 8 until 11, probably 12, and I can be reached at any point. But I would have taken the dog for a walk, gone to the gym, cooked supper, done something else, you know.
But like constantly doing a bit of both.
Yeah, and I find that easiest. I find it very hard to have the really straight boundaries. Same as on holiday, like I much prefer to catch up for an hour every day.
Yeah.
Rather than come back to this barrage of stuff. Yeah. And people, I bet they posted about that on LinkedIn. Everyone's like, that's really toxic. I bet none of your employees can switch off. I was like, no, completely not. I just say it's what works for you.
Yeah.
I'm not expecting them to be online at all. Would never contact somebody on holiday. But people, I think, have their own very staunch idea of what right is when it comes to work, rather than thinking that it's an individual thing and you pick how you'll thrive.
It gets to such an interesting, like, paranoia, fear, the view that if you contact someone while you're on holiday, that disempowers them to not contact you when they're on holiday.
Yeah.
And that's not that's not true.
No.
But there's so much like expectation of role modeling that's quite complicated.
I think role modeling is really complicated because you can't be what everybody wants you to be to everyone, right?
Like, absolutely not.
Yeah.
Because if we, like, my days sound quite similar to yours, except that by like 7 p.m. I'm dead to anyone. So
well, I'm not a morning person.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Like...
So like, I'm just starting at 5 and finishing at 9. Like, but we're doing the same shifts.
Yeah.
And that to me is necessary. I would never ask that of my team.
No.
And I'm completely comfortable with that. Yet it might not be great role modeling, but if I don't role model that, I'm just bottlenecking all their work.
And creating the risk that your business doesn't perform as well and no longer employ them.
Exactly. That's such a good point. Would you rather an amazing role model, work-life balance, or a job
that can't pay you?
or salary?
Yeah, and I think that's what's really, really tricky, is there are different expectations for different people. I think there are, rather than, I don't like thinking of a person as a role model. I like thinking of people role modeling certain behaviours. I think that's a much easier way to think about it. So if there is a parent that is a leader, making sure that they are role modeling and showing people that they're going to that sports day.
Yeah.
Or that they're going to that parents' evening.
Yeah.
Or that they're taking their full paternity leave. But not everything that they do needs to be scrutinised. they're role modeling certain behaviors and showing that it's okay. Same with for me, I think that I role model, although I'm always working, I show that like taking time out of your day to do what you want to do and to what refreshes you, what gives you energy is absolutely what you should be doing. Same with traveling and working. Absolutely will role model that as a behavior that is fine.
Yeah.
But not everything I do can be scrutinized. I'm not the perfect role model, and nor can I be expected to be, because I run a business same as you, right?
Yeah.
We have to do things differently because we have a different job. And we have a totally different life, and there's a lot of other things that we have to think about. But I do think it's important to think of it of the role modeling behaviours side of things. Of like, you can't just go, oh, I can't be a role model, so I'm just gonna act the arsehole. Contact everyone all the time. Yeah. There are things that you can do, going to the gym, showing that you're taking that time, showing that you're travelling and working, showing that you can be yourself at work, whatever the things that you feel comfortable role modelling are, just being very conscious and very intentional of exhibiting those behaviours.
The way we build examples of leadership and role models in our own brains is that way. So I always talk about building a collage, like our life experiences that you have, managers or leaders or people you work with, and you take behaviours that you do want to role model, and you take behaviours that you're going to rebel against, and you build this kind of life collage of
that's a good
this blended picture of what I want to be and what I don't want to be. And I think that makes total sense, that no one says, when I grow up I want to be that person. No. You say, I want to be a bit like, I want a bit of that and a bit of that, and I'm pulling together this recipe.
Yeah. No,
which takes the pressure off.
Yeah, and like no one, there was some really interesting feedback that I heard between, not at Flexa, but a manager was asking a question in one of our webinars and struggling with it. They said, I was giving feedback to one of my employees, and they said to me, I can never be you, so why are you expecting me to be? And I thought that was really interesting, because if you're giving feedback about work being done well and it's constructively given, it's interesting how that can be construed as like, I want you to be more like me. And I think that's a real difficulty when it comes to that role modeling, is it's like picking up on one behavior that manager might be exhibiting and saying, I need you to do a bit more of this. That's not saying you need to be entirely like me. It's saying, I need you to change this one thing to be at the same level as what I'm doing. But I think, again, it's that conflation between one individual thing and then a whole person.
I really struggled with that at the start of my career. That's kind of why I started a business. Was because I felt all professional feedback was, the way I read it was, you're not welcome in my business as you.
Yeah.
You need to be more like me to fit in here. And what I think was missing from that was the celebration of my individual skills. So I think there's a real difference to saying, you're brilliant in your unique way because of X. We need you to change Y to make X more shiny.
Yeah.
So I always think about it in the terms of like super strengths. So it's all about making you a better version of you as an individual.
Yeah.
And so that kind of question that you got feels like it was missing that like recognition of individual value.
Yeah, or the praise sandwich, as I call it. So you got to be like, you're great at this. This can be improved, but overall, I think you can get here because you'll be amazing.
Which is like the cynical frame on it.
Yeah.
Okay, it's just another shit sandwich, like whatever. I was trying to be more.
Yeah, trying to be more positive.
More positive about it. Okay. What does flexible working mean for you?
Yeah, I think about that a lot, because I think flexible working has this negative connotation and expectation, actually.
Do you think it still does?
Yeah, definitely. And I think there's also a negative expectation that is becoming clearer and clearer as well. So on the negative connotation to flexible working, it's assumed that people that want to work flexibly are wanting to work less hard. But I do think that's being perpetuated by a minority of people that do see flexible working as working less hard. And we've struggled with that at Flexa with underperformers.
Interesting.
They've come to Flexa thinking, flexible working, amazing. I'm not going to have to do anything.
And you're like, no. I'm working really hard.
Yeah. We had somebody who thought that core hours of 11 till 3 meant they worked 11 till 3.
Okay. I was like, that's not how jobs work. But yeah.
Yeah, and there are also people who totally get that flexible working is working as hard as you would do in an inflexible environment, but you have freedom to choose. And if actually sometimes it working harder.
Working so much harder.
Well, sometimes harder. But I think it depends on the kind of brain you have, right? Like for some people, they struggle with the lack of switching off and the sort of being always online, but some people thrive in that environment. And I think there are some people that thinking about work is work. And when you can't switch off because obviously you're on and out, in and out, you feel like you're working. We've had people say they're working a 12-hour day when they're online for like 6 of it. But because they're thinking about work, they think that's work. And I think it depends on the kind of brain you have as to whether you think thinking about work as in like, oh, I didn't check my emails. Now I'll have a look. Is that work? Or are you doing that while watching Netflix and you're actually having your evening off? And I think there's a loads of complexity and complication of how people think and cope, and whether they want work-life balance or work-life integration or work-life, what's the other one? Blend. And I think it's
what's the difference between blend and integration?
So I think
I feel like
there are so many definitions. Work-life balance is like 9 to 5, switch off.
Yeah, that one I'm clear on. And then I'm clear on that or.
Yeah. Work-life blend, to my understanding, is a bit more of like, there are stricter boundaries, but like you might go pick your kids up and then come back to work in the evenings, but you're not always going in, out. And
integration is like a full
everything
muddle.
Yeah. So blend is like in the middle of the two, from my understanding of that. I didn't coin that term.
Clearly. So like, I think. Okay, so I think I have work-life integration.
Yes.
But I actually think work-life blend might be a happier place for me.
That's interesting, yeah.
Because I get really knackered.
Yeah.
By the
constant on.
The on.
Yeah.
And I have to say this to myself all the time, so saying it publicly is a good reminder. For me, not all rest is, like, there's different categories of rest, and I'm very good at getting enough sleep, but I'm terrible at getting brain rest.
Yeah.
Time where because of the integration,
yeah,
I'm never just watching Netflix. I'm also working at the same time.
Yeah.
And therefore my brain is actually just,
it's
like running on a broken ankle. Yeah. Like you just need to put your foot up for 2 weeks and or an hour a day or whatever and do that.
Yeah. But I think those different kinds of work, it's very difficult for companies to assess what a person wants, and for an individual to know what they want and then to find the company that's going to help them thrive in that. And that's where I think the flexible working tension starts to happen of like, this isn't flexible because this company is full of people with work-life integration. That doesn't mean it's not flexible. It just means it's not your kind of flexibility.
Wow, that's so powerful. So what advice would you have for a candidate in navigating basically this landscape that doesn't have the right definitions?
Asking a lot of questions in an interview, and we ask a lot because it's not just about a candidate putting all the work in and trying to understand it. It's also enormously beneficial for a company to be able to find those people that help you thrive. It's super important, that help the company thrive. So it needs to be a two-way thing, and I think every candidate can have like a set of questions that help to understand the culture, but there's an onus on the company as well to explain it. So from a candidate perspective, asking questions around, what are general working hours? And it's pretty easy for a company to be like, oh, we don't, they're not enormously set. And then that is a suggestion that there is blend or integration, right? And it's like, you're done when your work is done. That's not a red flag. And I've had so many people post on LinkedIn, like, company saying that, red flag, means you'll always be working. I disagree. I think it just means that there is no like 9 till 5. And some companies, when they have no
it's just worthy of a follow-up question.
Yeah, exactly. Worthy of a follow-up question. You can also ask about how other people, like what other people work like in the companies. Like, are there parents? Are there people that, like going to the gym in the day? You can just ask questions around the kind of people that are there. Like, can you see yourself represented in that? And then asking around expectations in terms of like how is performance measured and things, because if it's all about hours or about going into the office a certain amount of time, then that's more likely to be the more structured end of work-life balance rather than integration. And then from a company perspective, in every interview, I spend about 3 minutes explaining what it's like to work at Flexa in detail. And one of the things that we're very clear on is that we are not a work-life balance company. We're a work-life blend or work-life integration company. And I don't say we're not a work-life balance company because I think that scares people, right? It's not to say that you can't have your work and life, you absolutely can. But it doesn't work in a startup to have somebody come on at 9 and refuse to work past 5, because there are some days where it's super quiet and we're like, if your work's done, whatever, head off at 3. But then if there's a busy time and they're refusing to work past 5, they get the double upside. Because you can't flex into demand, which is really difficult in a small team. I would never expect somebody to be working till like 9 o'clock at night multiple times, but there might be something that's gone wrong and it might have to happen once. And I've had instances of people just refuse.
Yeah, and it is really tricky. It's a really uncomfortable cultural moment.
Yeah.
I really struggle with it.
It's really hard. And I think it makes you quite cynical about it as well, which is why I now spend 3 minutes explaining it, because I'm like, I don't want to have to go through that again. Also, it's horrible for the individual. It's not just about me. Like, it's not nice for someone to have to go, no, I don't want to, and keep doing that. Like, that's an uncomfortable environment.
Or to say that that's crossed a boundary that I didn't realise we hadn't aligned on.
Yeah, and having boundaries, great, absolutely, like fully support it, but you need to work out whether your boundaries align in the beginning rather than clashing about it. And it affects performance. So I think I spend just 3 minutes explaining it, and I'm like, I totally get it if it's not for you. Please ask all questions, any questions around it. And I'm like, it's not about a culture of overworking. In fact, I think people generally work about 35 hours a week. It's just, it could be very spread. Also depends on the person, depends on their role. And we just have a conversation about it. But it's interesting how many people nod their heads and go, yeah, that sounds great. And then they arrive and it's like totally different. And I'm like, what else could I have done?
Yeah, we've had a bit of that.
Yeah.
For us, it's pace. We have to say we work really fast. We work really, really fast. We work really fast. And we say it over and over again in the interview. And then at the end of week 2, they're like,
it's really fast.
Yeah,
we've had a couple of that.
I don't know how else I could have told you.
Yeah, we've had that too, where you're like, it's fast paced. We work really fast. So I was like, I can't cope. And it's like, it's fair enough. Like, you absolutely do not have to cope with that.
Fully respect that.
But I did tell you.
I fully respect that. I'm so sorry you feel that way. Really pleased you've told me, but how could we have learned? I feel like I don't know what the learnings are.
Yeah.
How do you make sure you're running a really high performance team?
Yeah. Something, again, I think about a lot. We are very, very target driven. But also there's a sort of mixing that with how hard you can perceive somebody to be working. So if someone's really trying and they've just been given a target and it's not achievable, that happens all the time, right? Especially in things like marketing or sales, like sometimes the target's just plucked out of thin air and you're like, go try and get it. And there are things beyond their control. So I think it's both. It's being very output focused and making sure that we're always tracking that on a weekly basis. But also being very aware of the input that somebody's put in. And if someone has really, really put a lot in, but
in an intelligent,
I
think there's a difference between
like, not sent 1,000 automated emails. Like
if someone's really thought, because you have to create space to celebrate failure.
Yeah.
So
exactly,
good strategic thinking that didn't work is brilliant.
It's still good. It's still really good. Exactly. And so mixing those two things, and the most crucial part of being able to blend those two things is having managers that are really, really intentional with how they manage. And when I say intentional, I mean like being very close, but not micromanaging. So understanding the inputs, always being there to discuss them, to think about the strategy of that, being really hot on tracking things, and being really hot on regular catch-ups and regular feedback as well, and making sure that things are being tweaked all the time, because we're remote first. Some people come into the office 3 days a week. Some only come in once a month. So those catch-ups have to be super intentional and super regular to maintain that cadence and pace, because in a startup, like, you're constantly moving really, really fast. You can't have somebody feel lost for a month, not aware of the fact that their input isn't getting the output that we need. So it's a mixture of very human management to ensure performance, but also relying a lot on the quantitative data.
Yeah. what are your weekly tracking rituals? So we have a really unsexy, glamorous question, but I'm really here for the answer.
We have key metrics basically we've got 3 departments largely. And in commercial, like it's every stage of the funnel. So like how many are booked, how many were held, how many follow-ups, what's the conversion rate? Yeah. Basically understanding how many, who was doing what. Then in marketing, really, really similar through the funnel, like impressions, leads generated, etc., like all the way down through to obviously site traffic and splitting it all out. And then understanding the spikes as well, which is really interesting and difficult. And then on the tech side, obviously, it's like speed of sprints and builds. But every week that data is collected by whoever is in charge of that team.
For marketing, how do you think about brand and further up that weekly KPI funnel?
Yeah. Brand is so important to us.
I think that's why I asked the question, because it feels like you're clearly doing an incredibly good job at it in the B2B space, which is notoriously terrible.
Yes.
And yet you have a way of working that doesn't feel conducive to great brand building.
Yeah.
How does it work?
So I think because from when we were just 3 co-founders and we knew brand was really, really important, and in the beginning days when we didn't have anyone doing any marketing, it was sort of that my story and my presence was the brand. And then one of our first hires was social, or sort of social generalist person. And then that started to weave into like an actual Flexa brand. But everything that we do is with our awareness and generating as much, not necessarily even positive perception, but getting the messages across that we're trying to do in every single way possible. And it's because we move so fast, it can feel quite disjointed, but actually every single marketing message is very, very thought through. Whether that's content with our clients, focusing on autonomy in cultures or enhanced parental leave, it will go across every single platform and be very, very woven in. And there's stuff where we're very strict on it. It's like people in the press will describe us as a job platform. We're like, we're not a job platform. Here's the correct definition. Same as somebody will say, flexible working platform. We're not a flexible working platform. And so we just have rules about what we are and about what our brand is. Same with brand colours and what we look like. And across every platform, across every piece of content, across every post that people do, that is reinforced. And that's built us a brand that people recognise over time. But also not losing the creativity within very, very strict boundaries.
And you do lots of educational content.
Pretty much all of it, yeah.
And your personal brand. So you're doing, yes, you have a tight brand, but you're then doing activity that sits in like, do you see that as performance activity? Or do you see those, like the webinars and the content you produce as brand awareness? And how does that then get built into those KPIs?
Impressions, reach, and focusing. To be honest, we're not particularly scientific about it from a brand perspective. It's just like if we are generating more and more impressions every single month, particularly on client content, because social proof is so important within brand, then we are doing the right things. Really.
So if impressions are moving in the right direction, you trust that the rest will follow, knowing the quality of your content.
I'm such a fan of top of funnel in sales, in marketing, in hiring. Like our whole platform is effectively top of funnel hiring. And I do think if it's done correctly, you can largely rely on it to trickle down. Apart from if you're posting pictures of billboards and getting like millions of impressions, you need to think about what the content is that you're getting the impressions from.
Yes.
But if the impressions are maybe in the right direction with the content that we want to put out and it's aligned with our message, then I know that we're doing the right thing.
Yeah. And when so I think we're at the point where it does trickle down for us as a business.
Yeah.
We're at very early stages in like pulling it down quicker.
Yeah.
But the point is, if there's like a load of energy at the top of the funnel, it's such an easier job.
Yeah, it's a good problem
to just work out how to,
like
I'm using way too many mixed metaphors here, but like how do you How do you build traction with someone who has a sense of who you are? It's just
how do you get them to the right place? Yeah, exactly. But there are so many ways within that again, and it's like, we know these things work, like posting links in comments to make sure that people are going to the right places. In webinars, again, we'll do exactly the same thing. There is somebody in the comments saying, hey, check this out on Flexa, or check that out. And that could be educational content that brings them one step down, or it could be a lead capture, which brings them all the way down. And then same with we never expect the people that consume our content to do all the work and end up with us. So that's why we have the inbound outbound strategy of like, if we see a regular commenter or engager, we're like, they've shown all of the signals of being ready to talk to us. So then I will go out.
So we need to meet them halfway.
Yeah. And I think that's one thing that people do get wrong with the brand side of things, and with relying on awareness, is like, they're not necessarily going to come all the way down the funnel. You might have to go to middle and meet them there and bring them in. And that can sometimes be the fastest way if you're doing that at scale.
Yeah. What have you learned about marketing and sales?
What haven't I learned about it? I always thought that sales, most of my role is enterprise sales now, from the sales side of things. Like, I just do enterprise. And I always thought that sales was like a certain kind of person.
Yes.
And that sales meant you had to be really good at closing. You had to be like, right, are you ready to buy now? And I was like so uncomfortable with that notion of having to be that salesperson. Whereas actually over time, I found my own way of selling that I'm very comfortable with. And I'm not a natural salesperson, but I have a very good conversion rate now. And it's because of taking the educational side of what we do and even the brand awareness side of what we do and weaving that into sales. So every call that I'll have introducing somebody to Flexa, it's about why we created it, about why it's important, and then educating them on how top of funnel hiring is just as important as top of funnel marketing. And you've taken them on a journey to understand that, and then at the end they kind of opt into another conversation or opt out. I'm not trying to be like, right, it's 20 grand, you ready? So my sales process is probably longer, but I've learned, the biggest learning is that like sales can be what you want it to be. You don't have to fit into that box of someone on the phone like buy low, sell high. It can be educational. It can be what you want it to be, particularly if it fits in with that brand.
Those stigmas are so deep though. Because even as you said that, you said, I'm not a natural salesperson. It's like, we've just debunked the idea of a salesperson. You're going to one level through our conditioning that says if we're not like shaking hands and wearing a briefcase.
Yeah.
Wearing a briefcase. That's how much I know about briefcases.
Yeah. But then you're not that salesperson. And I also think it's very interesting seeing then people's reactions about it. And there are some people that come onto a call and expect to really be sold to. And they're like, oh, this is so weird. And then there are other people that are like, thank God I'm not being really hard sold to. And it's like tailoring yourself to people's personalities as well within that. If they really want to be sold to, like sometimes you have to be like, okay, I can do it.
Do you have a voice in your head? I'm doing that thing where I ask a question, but actually I'm saying it's asking for help. What I'm trying to say, honestly, is I do a lot of that.
Yeah.
And most of the time I feel good about it.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think you're actually just kidding yourself that you are doing this the best way you could. And that I could convert better if I stopped fighting industry best practice as hard as I do. I'm so committed to focusing on education, having an open conversation, being authentic. And my conversion rate is good enough that I've never gone, Lottie, you need to get yourself out of this job and go and do some training.
Yeah.
I do really worry
that you could be doing it better.
That like actually this is, it's like I talk to lots of people who kind of say, oh, I'm going to do marketing myself. And I find that really challenging. And I sort of feel like if I was a really talented sales professional, I'd be looking at the way I operate, being like, this is the equivalent of you just writing all your copy yourself because you think you can do it.
There's a balance, isn't there? If you feel Well, I'm assuming within your business, right, that you're the best person at sales from a conversion perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that kind of takes away so it debunks one area of like, oh, you could just have anybody else doing it. And I think there's something really, really powerful in being a founder and telling that story, and you have an unfair advantage.
Absolutely.
But that also means that as well as selling, you are doing people stuff, you're doing marketing stuff, you're going chatting to people, you're doing a million other things. And I think that there is, in sales, if it was your only job, you could go away and be like, okay, I'm going to become a totally different personality and absolutely smash a 50% conversion rate. But when it's just one thing that you have to do every day, and you and your personality and your business are so heavily intertwined, that imagine how exhausting it would be having to get onto every sales call and be like, I'm now going to have to be a completely different person. Is it worth that? Because will that then take away from all of the other aspects of how you bring all those things together?
Clearly not. But would some tricks up our sleeves mean that we were just doing a better version of that?
I think small adjustments, and you can look at sales as practice, absolutely. But I think this idea of like, could I be doing it differently? Could I be, going on an intensive sales course and becoming a salesperson?
Buying a briefcase.
Buy a briefcase, wear it. And I think that...
Be seen in East London with your briefcase.
But I think that concept of like, I can become a salesperson, I can become this different version. As a founder, you don't need to do that. However, you're selling and telling that story and having a conversation is probably the most powerful thing you can do. Can you know how to ask the right questions? Can I know how to close at the end? Absolutely, you can read a book. But like, you don't need to go and change yourself. And I think there's all of that energy. And I used to try to be a salesperson on a call, and I found it exhausting because I'd be doing 3 or 4 of them a day, and I was like, I am done.
The volume is...
Whereas when I lent into like, I'm the same person when I have a chat with one of the team versus go on a podcast versus go on a sales call, that became significantly less exhausting, and actually ended up with my conversion rate going up, which is interesting.
That's very interesting.
It's hard though. Sales is hard, especially when you're not you've never had a sales job. Like, no,
I don't find it hard at all until my back's against the wall, and I hate it.
Yeah.
90% of the year, I don't even see it as sales. It's total joy. I have really fascinating conversations. It just like, I really understand why recruiters have a bad rep and why estate agents have a bad rep. Because if your livelihood was dependent on that bonus, because your base is so low that you have this terror in your bones,
you have to just push.
You have to push. It becomes a miserable process. Your behavior just switches. Like, I become a completely different person if I'm like in a position where for whatever reason I feel commercially scared.
Yeah.
And I'm way less effective.
Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it? You end up panicking and then not actually making the right decisions.
You can't listen.
Yeah.
Because you can't hear feedback. That level of stress just turns off so much of your brain. So I think that's so connected with why sales has a bad rep and how to do it differently.
Is the stress. And I do think you're right on the listening. Like, you often see on sales calls, if I'm being told to, like, people aren't listening. And it makes such...
They just want to go back to best grist.
Yeah. And you're like, but I've just told you something and you just ignored it.
But what if I could show you a way?
Yeah. And you're like, okay.
Yeah. In terms of like the brand stuff, I want to kind of pull marketing and sales apart.
Yeah.
So if we think about the marketing bit of what you do.
Yeah.
From my understanding, webinars are your gold.
Webinars we do very well with, yeah.
How have you made them? What is the secret? It looks like you have just cracked how to do it.
We still test a lot, and I don't think we have all of the answers, but we have some of them. Like the most recent webinar that we did had over 800 viewers, which was amazing. We expect an average of about 300. I think there are a few things and we have such a good team behind it. Aqua, who runs the webinars and does all the messaging around it, has just worked out a few different things that are just brilliant. Most of our sign-ups happen 15 minutes beforehand. Mad.
From your database?
No. So we'll go email out, we'll post about it, and then we'll warn on LinkedIn that it's going on LinkedIn Live. And that's when most people start engaging, which is really interesting. You wouldn't expect that. You think people would want to put it in their calendar, but actually I think people are like, oh, I've got a spare hour coming up.
Go on,
I'll just tune in. So we always send an email out to everyone that's previously attended a webinar if they've opted in, plus all people that we've got on marketing lists if they've opted in, B2B. And then actually we get hundreds of signups from that, which is super interesting. Streaming to LinkedIn Live will just massively accelerate reach because there'll be people sitting on LinkedIn but like, oh, well, I'll just tune in. And the seniority of guests matters. Something that we didn't anticipate as much. We thought if somebody was doing an interesting job, that would be as good as someone senior. Whereas actually the webinars with the most senior people are the ones that will get the most views. Really interesting.
And the seniority of the audience matters?
No. Could be completely mixed. Like the seniority of the audience rarely changes enormously for us from webinar to webinar, but the seniority of the panelists will just attract more people.
Okay. And then you just want as many people as possible to come.
Yeah.
Because they then go on and talk about what you do, even if they're not the stakeholder.
Yeah. And then what we do is on the webinars, we'll post the link to like a quiz or something like a lead capture to make sure that the right people are opting in and we've siphoned them off. Which is something that we now really, really strictly do because it works really well. Is to make sure that you're giving people the choice to identify themselves as a lead if what you're talking about is compelling enough.
Yeah.
And it can be quite humbling because sometimes you get like 20 and then other times you get like 1 and you're like, okay, well, that wasn't very good, was it? If you're talking and you're like, you could take this. And sometimes loads of people are like, yeah, amazing, you've sold it perfectly. And other times it's like crickets. So you learn how to say real-time feedback.
Yeah.
It really is. Okay. And same with the title. I think the title really matters. And I used to be like, oh, it's just a topic. Like, but actually the catchiness of the title and how exciting it sounds is super, super important. So we spend a lot of time thinking about titles now. Yeah. So those are probably the 4 things that we know matter.
What in your marketing history have you tried and abandoned? What's not worked?
We've really struggled with TikTok. Really struggled with TikTok. So it has never really taken off for us. But I don't think we've given it enough time. I started on TikTok and then I couldn't do it.
Just volume.
I already do LinkedIn and I need to come back to it. I know I do, but you know, it's just one of those things just constantly on a to-do list. I know that you've started on it recently as well.
But literally because of Danny.
Yeah.
Like, I don't do, this is my TikTok. I don't do anything.
Yeah.
So Danny, after this, will tell, I'm just like, I like dance first. She's like, except I don't dance. That's the one thing I don't do. We have rules. There's one rule. She'll be like, this is what you're talking about. And I'll just go and she'll delete half, like, we've got it down to like, honestly, it's probably half an hour a fortnight for me.
That's really good. Yeah. That's really good. I should probably do something like that.
And there is no way I could do it otherwise.
Yeah. It's just so time consuming. But even as Flexa, I think we've really struggled because we haven't hired very well for that skill, which I think is really hard because, and I'm sure you've probably had people come on and talk about this before, there's a very big difference between a creator, like an individual creator on TikTok, and someone that can replicate that for a business. And finding that skill, we have thus far not succeeded.
So this was my eureka moment when I was like, if only I had a really good content creator. And then I was like, oh no, I do. I employ 4 of them. Because I run a marketing agency. I was like, well, I'll just get them to do us.
Yeah.
And it's farcical how long it took me.
Yeah.
But as soon as, for me, it was saying, no, I'm protecting this time that I can't otherwise sell.
Yeah.
Because that's our investment in ourselves.
Yeah.
It's not a separate line on the P&L. It's just like carving from within the time.
Yeah.
And it's exactly as you say, it's just that level of experience. I found it completely different to LinkedIn, where I've had a similarly really difficult journey trying to share the load. But I think that's also because I'm good at LinkedIn.
Yes.
I'm Currently, I'm not. But
LinkedIn's horrible.
in my bones,
Yeah.
I'm good at it.
It's not personal. Don't take it personal.
But I'm also not trying very hard. Like it's both of us. It's not you. It's all of us. I'm good at LinkedIn. I'm practiced. I've been doing it for a long time. And I have a good instinctive understanding of it.
Yeah.
TikTok, I am a complete noob, and therefore, it's been hugely energizing to just.
Yeah, I feel exactly the same about it. And it's hard to know, like, Beth, our director of growth, is now having a crack at it. She's like,
Yeah, I
I'll
saw
take it.
it.
Yes, which is great. And she's now like, okay, I'm just going to work out TikTok because it's like no one is.
And like report back. Yeah.
It's like, we'll just send her out a little mission.
She literally is. She's like walking around the park. Like my TikTok mission, making content.
Yeah. So we're giving that a go. But we've never quite got, aside from the webinar stuff, we've never got video content quite right. I think it's a big opportunity, but it's so hard. So hard.
It's high, even if it's just on a phone, it's high emotional effort and cost. Like,
Yeah, it's draining.
it's not, you can't test in the same way.
No. It's, you can't test of just like you spent 5 minutes writing 2 posts and just put them out there. It all takes more time, more effort, more emotion. And also people are so mean on the internet. These things.
Also, nasty.
Exactly. Like they got me that mean to some words. I'm like, whatever. Whereas it's like actually affect you. I've been called toxic on TikTok so many times. Because I said that people should, the trend of like, women need to stop apologizing.
Yeah, which they do.
But I was like, I think sometimes it's gone too far where like now people, when they're late for a meeting, go like, thanks for waiting. And I'm like, just say sorry. Just say sorry. And someone was like, that is so toxic.
I shouldn't, like, I know the right thing to do is to be like, thank you for the feedback. I really appreciate
But
your
not an
engagement. Or to like, but you can't feel anything.
No, you can't.
It's life is too short to
really care. But when it's, to your point, like when it's in your safe space, when it's like LinkedIn and it's my words and it's just like someone can disagree with my opinion, I don't care at all.
And your skin just gets thick.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas I think, but maybe because it's new, it's a nascent platform. Also, I think it feels much more vulnerable when you write something, you're really thinking about that sentence, right? You're like, those 5 words I'm happy with. When you're talking, and it's a snippet of us talking now, something could be misconstrued, right?
And also like, I don't know if I agree with what I just said, but like, I might, I'm open to a discussion about it, but like clears don't take, we're all developing these views as we try and have a go at these jobs.
Yeah, exactly. And I think especially like when you've got a 40-minute discussion and there's a 1-minute snippet and they're like, you forgot about this and this and this. And you're like, Jesus, it's 1 minute in a 45-minute discussion. Chill. Why do you care so much?
Or like, tell me, actually I think it's fine. Like, give us the abuse. We're putting ourselves in the public eye. We're open to it. Fine, whatever. It's on us.
Yeah.
But I'm here for the other opinion.
Absolutely.
Because I'm actually super interested in it. And
But it's the way it's delivered.
Exactly. So I do think, but then also we ask for it.
Yeah, you do put yourself out there, but I do think that there is a little bit of like an element of human kindness that has disappeared on when it's faceless communication like that. And it's
You're just like shooting your shot.
Yeah, you would never say to someone's face, fucking stupid opinion, toxic. That's not going to happen. Whereas somebody will write that on the internet without thinking about it. Just say, I disagree. I think actually we apologize too much. And that's a perfect example.
It's
whatever.
Can you imagine if we just walked around the world calling each other toxic?
Yeah.
It would make working life so much more entertaining. Have you got any great LinkedIn trolls?
I have a man
I've had classic.
Tony Tiger, and I don't know if he's someone that I know trolling me. I can't work it out.
Listening. Stop it.
So there's this guy that just comments under loads of stuff and he's like, repost my stuff, trying to call me out on things. But you know where something feels like someone has created it?
Yeah.
Yeah, and like it doesn't feel real.
It's in the name.
Like,
There's a clue here.
but it's like TIGHRE.
Oh, I see what you've done there.
Yeah. And I cannot work out if he's an actual troll or if he's someone that I know, because it's not like brutal. It's
So
just
either it's like a weird joke,
yeah,
or an actual troll
Yeah.
who is a pseudonym or a real person called Tony Tigray.
Yes, that's exactly. And I don't know.
I mean, you'll never know. What an amazing piece of investigative journalism for someone to take this on, like, the missing identity. Okay, well, if anyone's listening to this, got some time.
Please find out.
Please crack the case, Molly.
I've had to block a few people.
I actually don't. I'm pretty slow to block.
Oh, really slow to
The
block.
only thing I'll block is the DMs every 10 minutes.
Yeah, I got that for a while. Yeah.
Yeah, that's just hard. It's just distracting.
Yeah.
Not blocking you for any personal reasons. It's just quite
Yeah.
hard to do my day job.
I had a guy who we disagreed. He disagreed violently. I was fine.
You were toxic.
But he was continuing to argue via DMs for like a day. And I was like, no, this is too much. Like, you need to leave me alone now. I asked him stuff and he didn't, so I had to block him.
Okay. Did you say, am I going to block you?
No, I just said, can you stop contacting me? And he just carried on. And I was like, no, that's not okay. And then same as I've had a few like very aggressive commenters as well that I've been like, I just don't need this either. Not because they were disagreeing with my opinion. I don't mind that at all. I'm very open to the discussion. But where it starts to get quite aggressive, I think you don't want that to happen.
No.
How many people have you blocked?
Not many.
No, I've got 3 or 4.
Yeah, I think similar. But this is a fun little post-it that we should have by our desks.
Block rate.
Yeah.
Little tally.
I'm pretty proud. Price pretty low. I feel like I'm pretty liberal.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you a final question. What is one thing? This is making me laugh because there is one thing that someone can help you with, which is find Tony Tigray. Is there one other thing that someone listening to this can help you with?
I think if anyone has cracked TikTok for a brand, I would love to speak to them. I'd love to speak to them. And to pick their brain and understand how and what works, what hasn't worked. I think that's the most useful thing that we can learn at the moment.
I can help with that in that I can introduce you to Danny, who's sitting here, who can give you some of the answer to that. I think that we're in the stage of how you begin to get consistent traction, like get some consistent views. And we're very early on, but we're learning.
Yeah.
We've got lots of case studies for other brands where we had better results. We're very much in the early stages of my personal brand, but we do TikTok for lots of brands.
Yeah.
But it's that next bit, which is kind of what you were describing on LinkedIn, which is how you really use that TikTok strategically.
Yeah.
As opposed to just
views.
Yeah. We've basically, we've worked out that the 10-second clip format that gets 10,000 views, and therefore we can work out the 10-second clip format that gets 100,000 views.
Yeah.
But other than vanity metrics, that's doing nothing.
Yeah.
So I think
The latest
Yeah,
age.
I'm trying to see it like Mario. Like I'm on level 1.
But that bit is like you have to crack that bit to get
Get to the next before you can like jump up the cliff.
yeah, that.
Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
That was a great chat.
Thank you so much for listening. If you loved this episode, please leave us a review on Apple or Spotify. It really does help us grow and get more brilliant guests just like Molly on the show. Next up, I've got Hector Hughes coming round, who is the founder of Unplugged Cabins. So we're going to be talking all things digital detox and how to market holidays, which I'm really looking forward to. If you want to hear more real insights from the life of a founder in a startup, then please do give me a follow on LinkedIn, where I'm very vulnerable and honest about all things marketing and running a team. That is a wrap until next time.